To call to order the special joint meeting of the Caroline County Board of Supervisors and the Caroline County Public School Board. All members are present and we have a quorum.
All right, we will likewise call the special call meeting of the Caroline County Board of Supervisors to order. We have 4 topics that we're going to discuss. I think the school board has to have some more information on those topics. Speak to that. We didn't have any opening board comments, but I'm going to make one because it's kind of personal comment, and I think it's appropriate. I was a poor college student. Actually, I was a very poor college student. And like most college students, when they run out of money or they're getting close to running out of money, they call home and they say, "Dear Mom," in my case, "could you send me some money because I'm running out of money?" My mother, single parent at that time, before the word single parent was in vogue, she was between checks or whatever and didn't necessarily have a lot of money to send me. What she did was collect all the money I had in the coin jar and send it to me, amounting to $7. That's all she had to send to me. She sent me what she could give me. That didn't mean she loved me any less. It meant she still cared about me. So we're setting the stage here to say that we love everybody in this room. We may not do everything you want us to do, but we're going to do our best. And that's what we're here for. So that's the purpose of today. I want to make sure that all the folks that are holding signs, that are visiting, understand that we love you and we're going to try to do our best. So having said that, we are going to discuss the county contribution for, you have something wrong?
I erred at the last meeting for our policy. It was brought to my attention that I erred when I asked the teachers to bring signs that they had so we could read them. And it was brought to my attention that I erred and we said that we would not have signs during our meetings. So I want to correct myself. And I'm asking you then to correct and set us back on course, because I don't want to be out of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you were not out of order in the fact that there were signs. The fact that we asked people to come down and read the signs.
I did.
Read the signs.
I want to.
That's not normally what we do. So if you need to read any signs today, we'll go up and read the signs.
Well, it was just brought to my attention after the meeting that the policy was that we wouldn't have signs in our meeting. Then I was out of order. So I'm going to stand corrected if I was out of order. That's all. So I want to go back and do what.
Oh, I don't think you were
okay. Then
really out of order. So we're
okay.
I mean, we're good. Yeah.
But I want to put that on the record.
No, the signs are fine as long as you don't run up and jump in front of anybody with your signs. That's fine.
Okay.
We believe in the First Amendment. We believe in all of those, but you have the right to free speech and no clapping. We can still do this. We're all good. All right. So, Mr. Cully, we'll start you off with the county contribution for fiscal year 2023, and then we'll have any discussion we need from the school board members. This is going to be as interactive as we can with the school board members. So if you'd like to add something, please feel free to do so. Mr. Cully?
I proposed $767,348 in additional money, which is 5% over the local to schools contribution from 23 going forward. And so I think we're here to talk about any additional funds before y'all adopt the budget. And that number has to then be given to the schools so that they can then change their budget to match and then send us back their proposed budget by category so that we can appropriate that at our June meeting so that they will have money to spend from July, which obviously we've got to appropriate our budget for the same reason. So that's why I think this meeting originally was going to be Wednesday, but the schools had asked that they come, so they have additional information they want to discuss that they provided in this handout that should be in your red folder. And so I'm not going to steal their thunder, or if they explain their numbers, it's fine with me.
Well, where we are, you want to repeat your number one more time just to make sure?
767,348 additional local money for operations. That's strictly in operations. It's not in textbooks. It's not in buses. It's strictly in operation. And that's a 5% increase over FY23.
And as is the Board of Supervisors understanding, we are going to make a county contribution to the schools, and then the schools will make their budget from that county contribution, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Kelly, you want to add anything?
No, that's right.
You've started to do contracts, Mrs. Kelly?
They go out or when?
They went out last
Yeah.
Wednesday. They're due on Thursday, or Friday, excuse me, the 26th.
Want to tell us anything about that, or the percentages or things of that nature that are in those contracts, so we'll know where they are?
Sure, we used a 5% increase to calculate new skills for FY24, and of course, all of our contracts utilize the general statement at the end, which is indicative of budget availability and General Assembly action. So should we find ourselves post primary season with the General Assembly regrouping and coming back with something other than a 5% raise for standards of quality, then we may find ourselves back at the table with you having additional conversation and then have to reallocate contracts reflective of a new number, which we would come to agreement on. But as of right now, it does reflect the 5%, which is included within the skinny budget and based off of the prevailing rate.
And we saw Mr. Orrock and Mr. Fowler, the representatives at our board meeting, and Mr. Fowler, I believe, was at the business appreciation. So when I saw both of them, I asked for more state funding for schools. I'm not sure how far that'll go with just those two, but that's where we are. We do have some other constraints in that the state budget has not been finalized. Right.
Well, it has been finalized. The skinny budget is the budget that is currently out there, and that is what we are basing all of our figures on. I think we are all hopeful, however, that once the electoral process takes place in June, that the General Assembly will come together under the guidance of the governor, and there will be a number of conversations that will be transpiring in relation to business that I think many of us believe is not yet complete.
And it's our hope that we'll find some additional funding, because I understand there was some cutbacks basically, or some reduction in the school budget for next.
Yes, I think that was exacerbated as well by the sales tax scenario, which was made very public and was not filled for FY24. It was backfilled for FY23, but not for FY24. So you combine the impact of the skinny budget with the sales tax scenario, and we are only about $66,000 of new money above FY23 dollars.
Okay. Any questions of the board members?
Would it be helpful to go over this document? It somewhat combines your first and second bullet, Mr. Thomas, if that is helpful. We tried to create a one-page cheat sheet that would be very simplistic based on the topics that you identified for the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then before you go on, if you'll excuse me,
Sure.
we had to identify an agenda based on our county attorney's
Right.
recommendation before we could have a call meeting.
Sure.
So that's why this is the agenda. If there's an issue that we need to add, we have the opportunity to do that.
Sure. I
But I think
appreciate
we're going to
that.
talk about funding for the most part. So
Yes.
you go right ahead. Excuse me. Yes, sir. Oh, it might be, is that the YouTube version? It's okay.
It was.
We know Jeff does a great job with YouTube, so
Yes, we can.
must be something wrong with his phone.
All right, so taking a look at the document below the agenda in the red folder, it is titled FY24 Compensation Update. And we wanted to make sure that the numbers were extremely clear for everyone viewing either at home, in person, or here at the table. And so we know that an FY24 5% salary increase for all employees, not just our standards of quality employees, costs $1,905,303. We have $1,122,048 coming from state funds. You can see the asterisk that's noted at the bottom of this box area, which indicates that that dollar amount is based on the prevailing rate. So all of that funding earmarked for standards of quality 5% is based on the prevailing rate, which is substantially higher than the CCPS salary rate. And therefore, that results in local and state funds combined. When you add that to the $767,348 from the local government, it almost equates to a full 5% raise for all employees because the prevailing rate is so much higher than our current salaries. There is a difference of $15,907. That's in red, and that is just indicative of where that gap is for 5% for all employees. So we would just respectfully request that that be a consideration so we can incorporate all of our 700 employees in a 5% raise, that we just consider that extra 15,907, which then of course would be a 5% for all. Yes, sir.
The 66K you just mentioned.
Right. Yes.
Is that outside of?
But I know you've got a outside voice, so we're gonna have to speak up.
Okay.
'Cause I've got the,
All right. The 66K you mentioned just a couple minutes ago, is that outside of the designated 5% SOQ funds granted? Or I see 1.2 and then I hear insert 66, so help me out.
Yeah, it is very confusing. I'm going to allow Marcia to explain the 66,000 in relation to the 1.1, because it does on paper cause confusion.
Yeah.
So hopefully her verbal explanation can help create.
I thought I
clarity.
was good until I saw it here, and then I wasn't
Yes.
good.
No, that's a great question, Mr. Morgan. Thank you.
Certainly. So looking at the state template as a whole totality from FY23 adopted budget to FY24 calc tool from the state. Keep in mind, we lost that $2 million in state funding. So that is the net of 66,000 of all the state funds accounts together between prior year and this year in the skinny budget. Basic aid is one of those that's also going down, as we had mentioned. So in this, we're only pulling out the compensation line, and that's on the calc tool. That's where these numbers are coming from, the 1,000,002 or the 1,122.
And for clarity of your statement, the 2 million that she referenced is that one-time infrastructure funding that is allowed to be carried over into FY24 from FY23. That is a one-time appropriation
That wasn't for salaries. That was
only for infrastructure. Yes, sir.
and I think if I can add to that, we said, and based on the report you have, your budget actually increased $5 million last year. Is that the right number?
Yes, it was the 2 million of infrastructure, and
Right.
because it was the first year of the biennium, we did see about a $3 million increase. Absolutely, which is what we utilized to help us fund the 7% salary increase last year.
all right, thank you.
You
Sure.
see? Is that it?
As long as an answer to Mr. Sordian.
Yeah.
So is the 66,000 above, is it 66,000 above the 1,905,303?
No, sir. The 66,464 includes that 1,122,048 in the compensation line.
triennial budgets are 2 years, so they had that.
That's the second year of the money.
The state rates, the state funds are going down, the basic aid's going down. Sales tax is going up. Of course, compensation's going up. So it's the net of all the state funds.
So whereas you're saying your budget, we're all saying your budget increased 3 million in operating last year. This year it's increasing 66,000.
For state funding.
Right, state.
And it was actually 5 million last year in state funding. 2 million of that was
Yeah, I'm trying not to get that.
facility.
Excuse me, I'm trying not to get that 2 million confused because only that 3 million is what you could use for operation.
Yep.
Okay.
So that is a pretty clean overview of the 5% for all. And if there is clarity associated with that, then it does blend into the proposed pay raises for teachers in 0 to 16 steps for the FY23 year, which is the current fiscal year that we are in. Are we good transitioning to the bottom of this sheet?
It's one big
It
thing,
is.
to tell you the truth.
It
So
is.
the reality is, on your paper, if we could go to the next thing, which you're saying that the salary study step 1 is,
Correct.
you can go from there.
Exactly right. So we wanted to put these on the same page because we knew that this was an agenda item. And we also wanted to make sure that you had this document that you should be familiar with. This has been part of our presentation since we came in February. And it shows the different steps of the 2022 salary study. And we are only here tonight to talk about step 1. We recognize step 2 is not a feasible option in terms of the amount of funding needed to do step 2. We are hopeful that as the data centers come to fruition that we've been talking about at the business appreciation event and in a variety of venues, that funding source will really help us in the future. But right now at the bottom, what we want you to walk away with this understanding of is that we have the salary step 1 recommendation is for teachers on step 0 to 16 during this current fiscal year. Their current salary, if they come in at 0 years of experience, is $45,777. And you all know where that puts us out of 17 comparators. No need to repeat that. If we are able this year to implement step 1, the people that fall into step 0 to 16 that are teachers will see a sizable increase in their paycheck. And I can give you an example. 0 years of experience will have a salary for FY23, the current fiscal year, of $48,695. So they've moved from $45,777 to $48,695. Okay, now that same amount, which I'm just going to say about $3,000, right? That is not going to be all the way up through 16 because there's a different percentage in between steps, but they all will get a nice bump, and they would get that at the end of this fiscal year retroactive, because we want to use, which is what you see in item number 2, the 93.2 student increase for ADM, average daily membership. With 93.2 new students above what we budgeted for, we are receiving $561,902 worth of new funds. So that is within $2,000 of what we need to do step 1. Now follow me. This is where it gets a little complicated. Normally you would think that this is recurring funding, but because basic aid is dropping, we're in this skinny budget cycle, and we also have that sales tax error that they did not backfill for FY24. That money is already in our base budget for next year and isn't really considered recurring funds because of those other drops. Because of that, we can't pay for that 0 to 16 beyond FY23. So we are here today asking for your support, which I do believe, and please correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, I do believe that was one of your focus areas, that you really wanted funding to go to teachers. And so this is a step that would allow us to positively impact our more novice end of the spectrum, which you can see on the back side is the lowest of our teacher workforce in terms of pay. This step would also allow them to raise in the proximity to the 50th percentile of market range, which would allow, when we get ready to do step 2, for all steps of our teachers to be an equal placement to the 50th percentile. We can equally raise them up when we do step 2. Right now, we've got this. So to raise to step 2 would be far more costly here to do all at once. So we are asking for 563.21 plus the 15,907 from above.
Mr. Ford, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, the top side of the sheet is for all employees, 5%.
Yes, absolutely.
For next year's budget.
For next
For
year.
next year's.
Mhm.
Because I did get a communication from a senior, a veteran educator. I'm like,
Right.
thank you for the word. That's right. That's the right word. That it appeared, at least from what she observed in the meeting, that the raise wasn't coming her way. But I just want to make sure that I'm correct, that it's 5% for next year's budget, but it would be an additional for the 0 to 16.
If you do the bottom.
Well,
What you're asking for the bottom half is it's a step increase in addition to the 5%.
but it's their option to do the bottom anyhow, because if they have extra funds, they always have that opportunity to say, here's something we'd like to do.
You have to appropriate.
Right, we have to appropriate it if it's
I'll just make sure I'm
outside the
clear.
category.
I just wanted to
So
make sure I'm.
for your seasoned or veteran staff, they will get a 5% increase. The only time that is not applicable is that they have peaked, meaning they're at the very top of our scale and there's no longer a step for them to move to. And I think that happens at step 31.
33 on the
33,
teachers
thank you.
and 30 on the educational support.
Thank you. So you have reached that top, you will get the cost of living portion of the 5%, but not the step portion because you've peaked and there's no step for you to move beyond.
And the 5% is cost of living?
No,
No.
5%.
What percentage of the 5%?
I'll let Marcia respond to that.
Our scales vary.
Okay.
So the teachers have two different, at the lower end of the scales, it's 1.3 some. At the higher end of the scale, it's 1.6 some. So we said 5% inclusive of your step. And it varies on the educational support scale. So you're 3.6, 3.2, running around there for your COLA.
So this is combining, because teachers usually get paid 2 ways, either step increase or we get a percent increase. This is combining the two. Is that what we're doing here?
The 5% is inclusive of the cost of living, the step, and whatever the remainder is considered your additional compensation increase beyond that.
Could you explain the long?
Yes, I have a question. So on the bottom part, what you're saying is the 15,907. You could do that this year, but next year you're going to be coming back at us.
No, it's the 56 or the 563 is what they're doing now.
Okay,
This is
All
what we have to do.
But we would-
Leave the top one.
so on the,
Look that in.
okay, so at the bottom, this year, the, for that part, you would need you would need for us, but you're not gonna get that 563.21 next year, correct?
We are asking for recurring funds. We can only enact step 1 through school funding in FY23 using ADM, which of course has to be spent by June 30. Unfortunately, because of the current skinny budget scenario and the sales tax debacle that had occurred at the state level, we cannot rely on those ADM monies as they're recurring, but they're being absorbed because we have losses in other areas. So we don't have the 563.21 beyond FY23 to keep step one for 0 to 16 alive. So it would be, I would say, hasty or careless of us to issue that out to step 0 to 16, not knowing that we have reliable funds to maintain that salary increase into FY24. We would have to do it in a bonus, which is not accomplishing anything that any of us at this table wants for us to achieve. We want VRS impactful. We want to actually raise compensation to be competitive across the region versus a one-time lump sum.
A bonus is a good thing, though.
Oh, yeah.
It's not saying it's not a good thing,
Yeah,
okay?
but it's not achieving our
Yeah, give me
target.
1 second, because that's something we need to make sure we understand is this is going to be, the 563 is going to be a bonus. You're
No,
gonna modify everybody's contract.
it is not a bonus.
What's the logistics of that?
We would actually go back and reissue an FY23 contract with a new dollar amount. And then the finance office would calculate for every person that falls in FY23 between 0 and 16, what that amount is. And then that would be paid out through their remaining paychecks for FY23. And so we would then have to reissue for 0 to 16 FY24 contracts because that amount would look different as well. So there's a little bit of legwork behind it, but it's worth it.
I have a suggestion that I think we all win with. If we split that with you, the 563, and we allowed half of that to be done in 23, and we rolled the other half over to 24, we would have till 25 to catch up with the 563 that we need to come up with in the follow. Instead of coming up with it next year's budget, if we split that, divide it by 2, apply half of that to 23.
Sure.
And then apply half of that to 24, which starts July 1. July 1, your salary would be $48,695. The end of the year, which you would distribute, would be half of that as a pay increase for 23. And then the catch up we have to do then is in 25, not in 24. Because otherwise, huh?
I think the salary wouldn't be 48, it'd be 1,500, so it'd be
A little bit less.
48. It'd have
But
to
it
be
would
the whole five.
it would give us the ability to catch up in 25 and still give the ability to do a raise retroactive in 23 and a better than 5% in 24. Because otherwise, we've got to come up with the 563 plus whatever the 5% raise would be, which I think would factor into your top part of this equation almost immediately. So I'm just looking for how do we do the mathematical equation that everybody wins and everybody gets a raise retroactive and a raise in 24, and then in 25 we know what the new target number is going to be.
So I think that's a good idea that the businesses that are looking at Caroline are not going to come overnight. You know, they got to be built, they got to start, and the economy is a little crazy right now, and none of us are real sure about what's going, but this gets you a half a step plus your 5%. And keeps us from feeling really nervous about bond rating and interest rates going up.
So if I could ask just a few follow-up questions, and maybe the best person to respond would be Mr. Cully. Mr. Cully, can you share what the salary increases proposed for the county? What the percentages?
Well,
It's $1.75.
What is it in percentage?
It's based at $1.75, so that would range probably from our lowest paid people. The percentage could be 8 or 9%. So if you're at, we have some people that write, just above minimum wage, $13 or whatever that is.
a lot.
And then you're capped at 60-some thousand, then it's 6%. So 6%, and the lower you make, it's $1.75, which means the percentage is higher as you work your way down.
So
So
what I
we did
think I'm
last
hearing
year,
you
7%.
say is everyone's getting an 8 to 12%.
No, not
No.
everyone.
Oh, no, just the lower end
No,
of the scale.
like it-
But everyone is getting at least a 6%.
Yeah, 6 or greater.
But-
6 or
Wait,
greater.
And all that stuff, this year we got 5 or greater.
Before we do anything else, the 6% may be for somebody making $13 an hour, not somebody making
No.
50 or 60. You said it's capped
For
at 60.
anyone less
No.
than 60,670.
You make $1.75 is more than 6%.
Yeah.
As you go down, the percentage goes up.
A lot more. But that's the point was it's 6%, and I think that's really it's not really relevant because we're just talking about what we're going to give the school, so we're just trying to figure that out.
But I think what
understand.
needs to be good for the goose is good for the gander as well in relation to
Can I?
how we're approaching compensation and, you know, how we've funded other departments associated with the county has been a topic that we've had discussion in relation to. And I have asked, you know, for details associated with figures and creation of scales and the timeliness of those components. And I am in full support. And I don't know that you would find one person at this table that doesn't agree that some of our counterparts in the county were very deserving of the raises they received. But it is our job to argue in a similar fashion, or not argue, but to, of course, stand
Argue's a good
and
word, that's fine.
to stand
Debate,
and
whatever you like
debate,
to use.
yes. And so when I hear the kicking of the can down the road in relation to splitting,
Well,
I
all right, one at a time.
struggle with that
Let
approach.
Okay, let me explain it to you. We, Mr. Cully, actually directly controls the salaries of those people. We've got 8, 10 signs for teachers.
Right.
We don't control the salaries for teachers. We're here trying to figure out how much money to give to the school board, and they control the salaries for teachers, right?
Technically, that is correct.
Okay. So whereas one, we give Mr. Cully leeway to say, last year you got 5% raises across the board, the school board got 7%. So there was a difference. That's what he just said.
Right, which we fully funded with state money.
Right. But if we're saying who got what, now I'm speaking a little early, but I'm pretty sure we could get more votes to say give teachers raises. I'm pretty sure we could do that and say here's money for teacher raises. But once we give it to you, you control it, and you could give it to the entire staff.
But are you insinuating that we don't do what we say we're
No,
going to
I'm
do?
not insinuating anything.
Okay.
I'm just saying, what is the actual
We have laid it out to
perspective
the
of,
collective public
Yeah.
that we need the 563.21 to do step 0 to 16. That is
And-
what we are committed to doing.
and you're
There's
doing
no
that,
alternative to that.
right, and you're doing that based on increased ADM, not anything that was in your normal budget, right?
Correct. That, and you can
Okay,
see
that's
there's
how
only
we
a
pay.
$2,000 difference.
That's what I'm saying. It's not like you're getting more money to do that from the county or from the state. You're getting that state money because your ADM says that. And your ADM would normally say, for this many students, you should have had X number of teachers. Those teachers have been overworked because you didn't have those teachers until now, or until you see it now. So they're going to get some money for that. That's what, well, I'll speak for myself. That's what my position is. I want to give teacher raises. I don't have I'm going to try to give more money to the schools for teacher raises. That's all I'm saying. But once I give it to you, it's up to you where you put it, right?
Yes, we understand that.
So that's our point. Mr. Copeland had raised his hand first, and then we'll.
Yeah.
Because I would like.
I just
John,
want to ask you
excuse me.
sincerely, just, are you advocating for just a timing difference? Hang on, let me finish. Timing difference so that you have in one fiscal year to wait the next month to hit this
second balance in the next fiscal year. Is that really what you're asking us
That's
to do?
really what I'm asking.
Okay, I
Because
just want to
In
clarify. that.
25, we would have a whole year to then look at where additional revenues come. And it just, for us to jump to 565, because the other thing that's on the bottom of the list that I'm really concerned about is the $10.1 million we have to find for the HVAC for the middle school. Because we also have to find the funds for that. And that really does concern me because it's a whole building. It's the only middle school we've got. And it came in way above what anybody thought it was going to come in. So when you talk about 563,000, I mean, that is a chunk of change that we might need to actually finance. And we have to talk about how we'd even get to the 10.1 million. And that's something we haven't discussed. So what I'm trying to do is be equitable, say, you've got this additional money. We all agree it's gonna, 93 students, it's what, 561,000. If you split that in half, and you give a raise at the end of 23, which is coming up, and then you took the exact reciprocal half of that and did that in 24, July 1, you would essentially do the same thing, and it would give us time to start looking at where do those funds come from in 25, because
When you say that, they would have to return the other half of that. If
No.
they don't spend the money.
June 30th.
And June 30th, if they don't spend that money until June 30th, it goes back.
no, it doesn't go back to the state. They can spend that money. They could turn back our half. We could reappropriate that into their budget because there's no red and green money. It's school money. They don't send back when they have funds left over at the end of the year. They always come back to us and they want to do
Yeah. CIP stuff.
right. But what we could do is say we make the deal and say, okay, we're going to take 260 whatever that works out, $265,000. Give that to you in 1 July so that you can do the rest of the 0 through 16. And then in 25, we're faced with, we know we've got to come up with 561,000 additional dollars to make that all come to realization. I'm just trying to be equitable in all of this. And
We would only be able to do half of it if I'm following you correctly.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
The match would come from the other half of this ADM money, is what I think I'm hearing him say, and then the next budget, we do the other match of it out of local money.
But we need reoccurring for all of it.
I know,
to be
but
able
you
to
have to be right. It would
So we
all have
would only be able to implement, you're asking to phase step 1 in 2 pieces.
Yeah.
right.
Because
But-
we are not having that reoccurring money
Right.
of the 560.
Right.
No, I
And so-
realize that in 25, that's all new money from us.
563 and 25.
I
are all-
completely understand that, but when you do that, it's going to change your upper numbers because you're going to change what you're paying the 0 through 16 folks. So you're going to be short more than 15,000 because you're going to change that pay scale in 23. And when you go to 5% in 24, that number's going to change tremendously.
Perhaps, yeah, it may.
No,
And also,
it
it may change
Kinda
the
has to.
state.
it has to change. It's just
But-
Because your base numbers will be lower.
I understand, but you're,
Base
you're,
numbers on FY23 at this time.
right.
Right,
Without considering step 1.
right without step
All right.
one, so it's going to change.
All right, let me do something before we get into that much detail. Mrs. Carson, Mr. Taylor, and Ms. Spalding, and Dr. Rollenfeld, let's hear what you guys have to say, if you don't mind. Ms. Carson?
I just know previously that we have had issues with the funding and we're supposed to get money for this and then sometimes we don't get it. And I don't know what happens. I'm not blaming, but I just don't want to kick this can down the road anymore. I mean, I understand there's lots of things, I know the middle school has the issue, but we pushed that down the road till it got more and more expensive. And that's the reason that got so high, because we kept saying, oh, well, we're going to get some more facts done and check into that. And I just feel like if we don't make a commitment and do this now, and I understand you all have lots of things you have to do, but we're talking about 700 employees that the bulk of them have at least a degree, and that it's apples and oranges when we're comparing employees and employees. But I just feel like our teachers deserve it. I feel like we need to put forth the effort. Nobody wanted to give a tax increase this year. We didn't want to do it last year. And when is it going to stop? We have got to get the money and give money to these people that are working for us so we can keep them. And that's all I'm going to say.
Three of us did
And that- Jeff, before you go,
Three of us did vote for a tax.
well, the smart ones figured we'd use the money we had. Mr. Taylor?
I hear what you're saying. Two things concern me. Number one, we talk about in 25. We don't know who's gonna be here in 25. The election is gonna come. Certainly, everybody loves all of us. We all gonna be re-elected. We may be talking to a different group of people. And unfortunately, if it doesn't go in the way we think it's gonna go, or we would like to see it go, we may not be able to get that out. And I think that the morale of our employees is low. They look at the scale, they look at being able to go next door to other counties and make more money. And we finally see an opportunity to try and work with the salary to get them compensation that they deserve. But then we go back to them and say, well, we're gonna do half, and we'll see you in 25. And I just don't think that's gonna sit well. That's what I was saying.
Mr. Spalding?
Yeah. I said I wasn't gonna say this. I'll make everybody mad. That's the way it goes. Old Wayne was here, and it took me a couple of years to really get to know Wayne. And when I got to know him, we were big buds. And he used to say this all the time. I can't give you that money. And I'd say, Wayne, that's not coming out of your pocket. I said, that's coming out of the board's pocket. And he finally learned with saying, I can't give you, like my friend Floyd there and everybody else. It's like I'm opening up my billfold and I'm giving you money. You're not giving us money.
Oh, you don't want to see my bill, because there's nothing in it. So,
Every year, I give the county a little over $4,000 out of my pocket. Not out of the school board, but out of my pocket. And guys, when I give it to you, I figure you're smart enough to know what to do with it. And I shouldn't say, Jeff, you got to do this, or Nancy, you got to do that. I figure you guys are smart enough to do something good with it. And I would like for the Board of Supervisors to think the same about the Board of Education. That's all I got to say about it.
nobody's mad, because this is a team effort. And sometimes in the team game, one person wants to run long and one person wants to run the ball. We all want to win, and that's what I'm looking for, is a win-win. Dr. Rollinsfeld?
Thank you. So my comments are, I think the plan that has been laid out answers a lot of the questions that we've gone back and forth with over the last few years. So I'm glad to see it clear and concise. So that's one. I think two, we want to make sure that we give an increase where teachers can feel it and that it's not absorbed in taxes and this sort of thing. So that's two. And I think that when we stand on the rooftop and look at this, the last compensation study that had a whole dialogue with it, we have, and we buried that. Water under the bridge, let's start again. We are at the place where we have other divisions who are bold enough to put billboards right here in our county. That's one. And the gap is such that when people are balancing, is a $20,000 increase worth the shift? There was a time where it was enough to keep teachers here. I have shared with this board, that was my story, $20,000 more dollars or 15 more miles But when I look at daycare, gas, food, mileage, the availability to my own kids, it was enough to keep me here. This is now not the case. And I don't want to put my fears out there, but my concern is we do not want the bottom to fall out because we continue a forward narrative. Because I think that 25 is going to be too late. People are looking at when they can get out of their contracts now. What is the timing between if I take this position and is there a gap in my pay? Now is where we need to send this message to retain what we have. 25, I don't think it's going to cut it.
No, but they changed.
Wait. John, you want to add anything to Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, we keep saying kicking the can down the road. This dollar amount, this is to bring us to the median salary. This is not, we're not going to be the #1 paying school division in the region. We're next to last. This isn't Spotsy, Henrico, Hanover. Out of the 16 localities that are next to us, 60% of our team.
For what category? Teachers?
For pay scale.
For teachers.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are next to last. This means, and I'm not going to say names because I don't want people to go online and start looking. 60% of our staff does not live in the county. This is not a question like Dr. DeWanda Rollins-Bell said. Do you have a comment you want to share? We're all here. We're all listening.
Wait a second. We're going to try to have one meeting. There are occasionally times when there's a thing, and I'll try to stop it.
My point is, where Dr. DeWanda Rollins-Bell says she can drive 15 extra miles or whatever for more money, 60% of our staff do not have to drive. We have staff telling us that they can drive less and make more money. This does not put us over the moon. This just puts us in the middle for steps 0 through 16. I think that that's a modest increase for us, and I think it's worth advocating for our staff.
That's what I wanted to make sure we hear from everybody, not just me or Mr. Kelly, but all the school board members and all the board of supervisors. So, and we are going to go back for another round before we go. Who had their hand raised? Ms. Long?
I just wanted to clarify and make sure I'm not misunderstanding. Ms. Carson, you said about the air conditioning system. I just want people who are watching to understand we didn't kick anything down the road because that would be in your pot of money in your maintenance fund, correct?
Wasn't part of it with the CIP. The HVAC wasn't any of it with the CIP.
Well,
That is our next agenda item.
Yeah.
I do think Mr. Sealy has a valid point that costs have risen through the pandemic, and the one bid, which was rejected because it was outside of our identified budget parameter, was exceedingly high. We do believe the feedback that we've received from those involved in the procurement process has afforded us to make adjustments, which we'll share with you, which will bring in future IFB bids that will be far more reasonable and aligned with what we are anticipating. But I do think there are, of course, unknown costs that come along with any large full-scale replacement of an HVAC unit. So I do think that that's a valid point. I don't believe that there was any intentional kicking the can down the road of this project. It has simply been pandemic related, ESSER related, architect and engineer delay related. So there is a laundry list of reasons why it is taken longer. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Black, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think what the schools have presented to us is very fair. I think when you look at a budget, a lot of people see a bunch of numbers, and it's really the living documents. It's a list of what your priorities are. And you know, as a member of VACO, when I go to a VACO meeting and I'm sitting around with a member from Floyd County, and then there's Hanover County, and then there's Fairfax County, and we're talking about schools, and we all have an agreement. All of our relationships with our school boards aren't great. But when you go around, you say, what % of your budget goes to the schools, local budget? And you hear 52%. And then you hear the lowest number I heard 40%. And then someone asks you, what's yours? And we can say what we want about of our taxpayer, our local money that we collect locally.
Hold on one second, Jeff. Jeff, are you controlling the chat?
No, that's David.
David, would you stop the chat from popping up, please? I'm sorry, Mr. Black. Go right ahead.
It's 33 cents. It's 33% of our budget's going to schools. It's 7% less than the next person on that table. And they're like, are you kidding me? You know, they seriously say that. I think it's, we say all the time, I hear, oh, well, you know, we got revenue coming in. Revenue.
Wait a second, Jeff.
The revenue, 33% of our budget. Okay. All right. That was the dollar Tamika gave us. It was 33% for schools and 32% for
That's expenditures only. That's not debt. That's not revenue and debt.
27% without that
Okay.
debt service.
But-
and 30
So let's get
Let
the
him
numbers
finish.
right.
Let him finish. Go ahead, Mr. Black.
But you're going to get what you pay for. You're going to get what you pay for. And when you see localities around here, I mean, Mr. Kelly can tell you, Mr. Kelly and I teach right next to each other. I don't know, Mr. Kelly and I have gone up 13% in Spotsylvania in the last 2 years. And we're at the upper end. We're not the lower end, but everyone's trying to shove money at the lower end because they want to keep the new teachers. We're at the, Mr. Kelly and I are at the upper end. 13% in the last 2 years. How are you going to end up competing? How are you going to get what you pay for? And if you don't start paying the teachers, every time, you know, Scott Mosher comes to us, Sheriff Mosher comes to us and says, hey, I need this for the deputies. Loftus comes to us, I need this for the firefighters. Well, yes, you're right. We're losing firefighters to Hanover. We're losing firefighters when we do it. And we have been very generous to the other part. And it is true. So why is it when the schools come to us, we don't believe it? We believe they're wasting money. I mean, they're hemorrhaging teachers. And we don't believe it. So we're going to have to make a decision here about what our priorities are. And then the other fine thing is I hear of the revenue coming. Well, the revenue coming in from the data centers, if that happens, is not coming into like FY28. That's not coming in next year. So we can talk about data centers, and if that revenue comes in, yeah, that'll be a great revenue stream for us. But that's not coming in until FY28. We're in FY24. So we'll have to hold on for 4 years. So we can't say, oh, look, if we just hold on to 25, we're going to be fine. No, we're not going to be fine. We have to hold on for 4 years. What are we going to do? Tell the teachers, oh, you just hold on for another 5 years? And then when we get the revenue stream come in, then we'll start to give you a pay increase? I think this is very fair. I think they've gone out of their way to work with us. And I think that we need to meet them on this and finally say, hey, look, let's do this. So, I mean, that's where.
Let me go to Mr. Coyne. You had your hand up?
Yeah. I've heard for 7 years how we want to funnel money to the teachers primarily because that's the hardest to build. And this plan is exactly that. And there's a commitment, and I support that commitment wholeheartedly. I wish we had gone up a penny and a half, so it wasn't a strain. But I am optimistic about revenues for the next 12 months. And I think the number 1,346,276 is what I've added up. If that's correct. That's the 767,342 plus the 15,907 plus the 563,021. It all adds together. You know, I don't like writing big checks, but I think we've gone up, like Mr. Black said, we've increased salaries for the county staff significantly the last, especially for public safety. There's 5% for everyone and an extra focus for teachers, which I am happy about. And I do have a point of feedback that the initial number, the much larger initial number came, it was easy to say no to that.
$4 million.
It was very, very easy to say no to that. And once you start saying no, it just gets easier. And if we had started at this number or closer to this number, it would be a different discussion right now. I have a hard time saying no to that.
All right, Mr. Underwood, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I have a little bit of commentary. First of all, I'm gonna go back to Mr. Black's comment about the sheriff's office. We haven't hired a road deputy since 2010, other than resource officer.
Replacement.
Replacement, but we haven't had it.
Yeah, we have to add the staff.
And I made that statement at our last meeting. Now, we've put in an $8 million cell towers,
Radio system.
because we were mandated by FCC. But the county has grown since 2010. They're receiving more calls since 2010. As I mentioned in the last meeting, the fire department, volunteers played a major role in answering service calls for us. That has decreased. We then understood that we had to increase our service. So yes, we hired the 19 firefighters for the whole community, not just because we did it on a whim. It wasn't mandated. The one thing that I can agree with tonight is that we are talking about increasing teacher pay. And I can agree that we look at teacher pay and how we get there. The 5%, I think that's pretty much a no-brainer. Whether we split the money over the 2-year period, that's my debate. But definitely something additional should be done. Just what should be done, just not sure.
Yes. I think you started this. You want another round?
Yes, I do. Because this isn't kicking the can down to 25. You would do a retroactive raise, just so we're clear, in 23 with half of the money. So all the teachers would get half of what the initial, whatever that is, it'd be like $2,000. Let's around $1,500. Retroactive for this year. Starting in 24, July 1, they would get the next $1,500 starting July 1, which would then give you the whole piece, but it's split so that we're not looking for over $500,000, because whatever we do to the 23 budget is not reflected in our 24 budget. It's going to increase it. Because if you give a retroactive raise, that 5% gets to be a bigger number. I mean, we're all clear there so far. I mean,
But so then
it is, Marshall, if you give the 0 to 16 teachers a raise right now,
Correct,
it is not in our it is not in our increase for next year.
correct.
So that means it would have to be more money locally funded to match that 5%. We agree that?
Just for the 0 to 16, if you
Right,
do it
right,
half of it. So
Right.
it would be the other 250 next year, just to remain at what I gave them this year.
Correct. So, but on July,
But you're saying give them the other half, which
You
means
you stick with your 500 number. Let him talk about his half number,
okay.
just to make sure we all understand.
Well, that's what I'm trying to follow.
'Cause we haven't decided to go with his half number yet,
I understand
so it's a
that.
little bit of.
But I think the
more
way
discussion.
he's explaining it, he said we would only need the 250 next
Right.
year
No,
and
no.
give the other 1,500,
Actually,
which we wouldn't.
280 is half of 560.
Yeah, 281,510 is the half number. So if you gave, I just put this in Excel, but if you gave, instead of 563, you gave 281.50 in 23 in June, you would need 5% more of that than you've got in your sheet up here, which is about $14,000 more for the 281 going into 23. You would then need the what he's saying is give them the other half, and we would have to come up with 281. 510 more local money.
Okay.
You would have the other 281 in July.
That
So you would go to
reappropriate.
so that would do what you're saying. So instead of us having to come up with 563 for 24, more than what's in right now, we don't have to come up with 281, but your people would be in July, the step you want them to be. They just wouldn't be in it in 23. So and then we would only have to find 281 more in 25 to make that wash out, along with whatever raises are moving
281
forward.
more and reappropriate 281 carryover.
Right, we would have to come up with.
All right.
We already coming up with 281. What I'm saying, that's built in. We'd have to have another 281 for 25, and we would be at the 563 plus whatever 5%.
All right, give me 1 second, because there's a lot of questions on that, and we haven't, as a group, decided that's the
No,
road
I
we
know.
want to
I'm just
present.
trying to follow,
So-
just make sure I understand.
Yeah, let's just hold that for a second, because all of this involves the whole big picture.
And I want to finish.
Can you hold on 1 second, because I want to go to 3 and 4, which is projected balance for this fiscal year, and then briefly talk about what we're going to do with the HVAC system, and then come back once we've talked about everything. Okay? So I want to just make sure we all understand we've got a decision to make on which path we take. I think we've got some consensus. I just want to get the whole big picture out, and then I'll come back to you, Dr. Rollins, because you had your hand up. Is it, Mr. Kelly, I know it's a little early, but it's the middle of May. You got another in the fiscal year. You can go ahead and ask somebody.
No, I've asked myself, and that's
Okay.
the funny thing, and I always get the same responses. We're not sure until that end of year tax revenues, the tax revenue, sales tax revenue, it keeps coming in up through August.
Right.
And we have to have all of our
And then it back
money,
bills.
right, so you can ask Ms. Stevens, but she'd probably give you a more articulate answer than what I have, but that's.
Certainly. So at this time, we do not have a May or a projection in May for the year end. We have 2 months of sales tax that come in July and August. We do not know what they are. Of course, we project. We still have a month of payroll in July that goes out for your 10 and 11 month employees. So there are too many unknowns at this time to nail down a projection for the end of the year.
The one known factor, of course, is ADM. We do know that we have the
You know your ADM
amount.
went up, so you're gonna get
Absolutely.
that $500,000 more period this year.
Based on the skinny budget.
Right. So if you
And
did,
without having a final state budget, that's another unknown for all other state pot money.
and the reality is, we may come together again when we all have a final state budget. Because if you get another $1 million from the state, I'm sure there'll be some sort of balancing act of request to say, what we do.
There is a propose, of course, with the 7% out there versus a 5%.
Right.
That is still out there.
Right. And we won't know for sure, but we have to start the fiscal year July 1st. It's not going to stop us anyhow. Now, quickly, yes, ma'am.
Before we switch into HVAC, I do
Yes,
think it would be important to just talk about some additional funding sources that may be considered. I think there are 2 areas that potentially could be entertained to support the full 563.21 in FY24.
If you can hold up on that for a second, and then I'll come back to you. But I just want to make sure we touch base on everything so everybody knows all of the things we're dealing with. I promise to come back to you. I just want to give you a quick second, or Mr. Kelly or Ms. Stephen, just a quick update on where we are with the HVAC system.
But I think what we're doing is we're muddying the water without getting all facts on the table before you switch to a whole different topic.
No, I'm
So
gonna come back.
I would respectfully request the opportunity to just share these 2 data points.
I promise to come back to you. I
Mr.
promise.
Thomas, I think they're very relevant to
We are,
the
but the
situation.
county revenue sources, if you trust me, I will come back to you and I will help you out.
These are county revenue sources, just so you are aware.
Thank
you. Okay.
We're gonna talk about just HVAC and then we're gonna come back. So, Ms. Stevens, are you gonna do that since you did the IFB?
Certainly, I can start off with the HVAC update. So the IFB closed out. We had 1 bid. It was $10,609,671. We the IFB with no award issued because it was outside of budget. We sought feedback from the contractors that did come to the pre-bid meeting, as well as other contractors that looked at the bid on EVA that did not actually bid. In doing so, they were requesting even evening and weekend access, which we had amended the IFB at the time and allowed it a few more days extension. They were unable to begin work in summer of 2023 is what mainly we heard from them.
They were unable?
They were unable to. So they requested to work through summer of 2025. So with that, we have ESSER funds that are expiring this September. So we have been working with the contractor to bring in materials only. So we have we received the materials list of what they could get us in time to pre-buy that. We are in the process of purchasing that, but of course we needed to ensure that it was approved with the submittals that they were submitted to the A&E, and we received that document today from them. So we will be purchasing that in order to not lose any of the ESSER funds that was expiring on September 30th of 23. It's approximately $640,000 of equipment that we will be pre-purchasing and bringing in. That list will be included in the new IFB that hits the street. We plan to have the IFB hit the street on the 24th, so 2 days from now, and it will include summer of 2024 as well as summer of 2025. For an update on the state grant, we were not awarded the state grant. I have in your packet the awards that came out. There was only one awarded to Region 3, which was Fredericksburg City. There was $450 million allocated. $365 million was awarded, and it was based on the competitive application criteria, which was not only school data, but also county data. So in that, I have put the rankings of the scores beside it. So you can see the rankings that we have. It was asking, of course, we had to define what the building was, condition based on the guidelines that they gave us for fair, poor, and good. We were looking, they also looked at our percentage of free and reduced. They looked at the county's locality physical stress designation, and the county is below average. We received 3 out of 10 points out of that designation. There were only 2 school divisions that have that status that were actually awarded. Another area that we had was there was a maximum of 10 points that were allocated of debt capacity of the locality, and we received 0 points with the county's debt capacity in 2020.
Ms. Stevens, may I ask you the question the Board of Supervisors is really interested in? How much money do we have for this project?
Okay, certainly. Let me just finish with that. We scored 55 out of 65 to be awarded with that.
55 out of 65.
Mm-hmm. We do have currently ESSER fundings of the $3,015,909. That is the school's ESSER funds that we had allocated to that. There is the school carryover funds of $1 million, in which you all previously appropriated to us from 22 and part of 23 carryover. And then there was $868,684 that was appropriated on March 14th.
Right.
It's about 4.8 million.
4.9 almost. That's on the last thing in there.
4.884 million.
No, it was a criteria question.
Oh.
Looking at number 11, criteria.
Yes, sir.
Aren't those same items that are being used as criteria also used in composite index?
No,
They're, none of those are in the composite index?
none of those are in the composite index.
Oh. That's taxable real estate side.
Taxable real estate is, but this is looking at how the debt is supported by the taxable real estate.
Starting to get the bonds on total.
It's just like we're getting hit twice.
I can see there's three components in the local composite index. This is specifically looking at the county's ability of their debt compared to their
Direct relates to their building.
fair market value.
So they're double dipping.
So we, I guess it's safe to say we don't have enough money to do this project. Nor do we have enough money to do half the project. We are going to try to do the project in the summer of 24 and summer of 25.
Did A&E not advise you that you need to push this out further than summer of this year?
They did, however, we were looking at the ESSER funding expiring in September 2020.
How much do you have to lose?
Because they had delayed getting us the bid to, or the design.
3 million.
And for clarity, we have ESSER funds that expire in September of 2023,
Right.
as well as 2024.
But I don't know of a reputable contractor that's going to start in 2 months for something this size.
No, I think they're trying to buy the parts.
I understand that. I mean, but that's not what what hit the street first.
Right.
And they know that. A&E knows that. That's my frustration with
Ours also.
with
With the
A&E,
delay of the
not
design.
you. That
Yes.
A&E knows exactly what their capacity is to get the work done by summer of 2024 for that.
Right.
And
And they're the
if they
ones that
don't,
recommended
this
this to
is
them.
what
Yeah.
they do. They
Yes.
know. If not, they should know.
Can I add one thing?
But that
Yes.
was tight.
From experience in a courthouse where the architects approved submittals and they designed for one brand of equipment, accepted submittals on another brand of equipment, and then it wouldn't fit in the gigantic room because the equipment was different sizes, so things had to wiggle all around, and things that were planned for the room had to move into other rooms in the basement. You might want to make sure that what got submitted is what they designed size-wise, and didn't say, oh, this is an alternate, and it's okay, and then it doesn't fit. Just something that happened to me, when you're counting on your architect, and you're not reviewing those submittals, and they accept it, but then when somebody comes down the road to put it in, then it doesn't work, and then you're going to be going all over the place trying to, fit air handlers or whatever that is in. So
Yes.
you may want to double check that that what got submitted is what they designed, not an alternate that they've accepted. Just food for thought.
The specific equipment list as to brand and everything was submitted to the A&E for their approval to the design.
Okay, and the reason I wanted to, and I appreciate you allowing me to do that, but the reason I wanted to hit that one, in addition to the projected fund balance, was we all know we've got a lot of work to do next year now with the HVAC system. So got to figure out how to get some more money into that since we didn't even have money.
The A&E is not coming off of their estimate at this time. They believe that this was a
Good for how long?
elevated estimate or elevated bid just with the timing of the summer of 2023 work.
I think that's a reasonable assessment.
So we do anticipate future bids coming in at a much lower rate, however, not what our initial dollar amount was in terms of what was planned for. And we also know that we will have some remaining ESSER funds because we haven't been able to fill some of our highly qualified teacher reduction positions. And so we are getting together on a regular basis and pulling some of those into that separate account so that we know that we can ultimately use whatever remains from ESSER for the actual HVAC project. So we know that we will have some additional funds. We just don't know what that will look like at this point in time. And of course, the IFB bid process will give us a greater understanding. And that should be on the streets tomorrow, Wednesday. Thank
Yes,
you.
she said 2 days. All right.
Thank you.
I appreciate that step. So now we kind of understand there's a very big project that we're gonna have to find funding for. But that's just part of where we are and what we have to do. So let's look at I think we heard a lot of people say we want to do something for teachers. I'm not gonna say anything that'll make you mad. We've heard a lot of people say they want to do things for teachers to help out. I believe that when I asked county staff to do a quarterly report, and we had a report from schools too, just to make sure, we found that there were some calculations in terms of revenue for the county that were not included. The Commissioner of Revenue had more vehicles than we thought. So there was $1 million or 900 and some thousand in that revenue, and some other revenue that Mr. Kelly recommends we use for debt service, which is a good thing. The one thing that we have not considered is there is a June tax payment that all of those personal property bills will see. So we will actually receive additional income in the $400,000, $500,000 range this year that's not included in the budget. That will be available, I guess, July 2023. That has not been accounted for in the budget. Just like when we do a tax increase for the year, the actual fiscal year that we're in June, we always see an additional bump. So this is our bump from revenue that we found in personal property. So there is 450, 500,000. Mr. Cully found out the exact number. I was looking for it on my computer, but it'll take a second. So that's just a revenue source that we have one time that could fix something we're doing. And I wanted to have the whole picture before we got to that. Ms. Long, you got your hand up?
Yes, I was just saying that sounds wonderful. I get the feeling listening to people talk, we want to make this work, but we want to make it work so that we make sure that we've got the funds without stressing anything else. But we found some real funds. So does it matter if we do it, Mr. Cully, by splitting it or doing it whole book-wise? I think we better do it all at one time if we've got it, but if we don't have it.
If we split it, if we do it all at one time, we have a bigger hurdle to overcome with the 5%. If we split it, they still get the same results, and we actually, the 5% that we have to make up from the 23 budget is still something we have to do, and we still have to add additional of almost 200,000. So we're going through half of what is found or supposedly found because we don't know yet. And I'm just trying to keep us all whole and the teachers get the full amount July 1. That's really the goal from my perspective is July 1. Everybody's whole, but we do it in two pieces. As Marcia said, we still have to come up with at least 281, and it's actually going to be 300 something. Because you've got to add the 5% to 20. The 23 number goes up, and the 5% costs us another 15, 16, 17,000. So we're still going to end up spending 300 of the 400 that's found money. It's going to go up 5%. So if we do it in two pieces, the teachers get the full raise 1 July with a retro in the 30 June. They get retroactive for half. 1 July, they get the whole thing. We still have to find about 300 and some thousand dollars. And I'm just trying to be fair to all of us so that we're not.
The important thing is that it gets done.
Would it be appropriate for me to share a couple of thoughts that we believe that are
Dr.
revenue
Donald still
related?
had her hand up first, and then I'll
Sure.
go back to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for clarity. 561,912 is the increase from the state for the increase in the ADM. Correct. So that is money from the state. So am I correct then that what we're talking about is splitting state money and not local money?
Not totally.
It
No.
could go either way. Realistically, you got two pots of money and you could say you're spending county money for this and state money for that, or you give county money back and state money back. It's really up to you to say what money you're giving back or what money you're spending.
What, Charlie?
That's really it.
So
But go ahead.
if
Well,
Mr. Cully has stated before at the end of, year end that they reverted all as local money at the end of the year.
Right. This goes back
So-
in the general fund to be used on capital or whatever the board ultimately appropriates once we know what your end of year money is. But I think what I heard Mr. Seeley say, if you took, and don't use the 561,912, use the 563, which is the cost of the 0 to 16 step one. So if you take that money that you want to do in June and only get half of it in June, that leaves the rest of that can go into July. Then the county would make up the additional 281, 510, plus you've got to put about 14,000 more for the 5% that the salaries would jump up between 23 and 24. And so the county money going in new next year over and above what I've got is 295. If you did it all, it's 563 plus 5%, which is 28,101, which is really 591. I know that's not what you asked for, but if you need 5% on that from 23 to 24, so that's got to come from somewhere, correct?
and that's kind of
The 5%, I am not concerned with. I am confident that we can cover the differential between that.
Right.
But what I really think is important is for us to really have all of our revenue sources on the table, and I don't. I appreciate you sharing that new.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
done?
Dr.
Sorry.
Rosell.
Still not clear.
Sure.
So if we can circle the block on it one more time. 561,
563.
I'm talking about the ADM.
Yeah, 561 is what you got for 80.
What part of that is local funds?
It's all state money.
Until June 30. And if it's not spent, it then rolls into local funds.
So,
It's got to be
general fund
appropriated to be.
was, okay. So 561 is state money. We have to spend by the end of the June 30 day, we have to spend.
Right.
What we don't spend, schools cannot hold money. We can't carry over. So what we don't spend, we give to the county. The county then puts in general fund.
Correct.
Okay. So the 561 is state money that would then go to local money as carryover.
Correct.
I think what I'm listening for is where is the local providing a contribution versus us self-funding this step. I think that's where I'm missing.
I just read it to you.
Yeah, but you're not self-funding anything. The state is funding 561 based on the ADM.
Correct.
And their formula, from what I understand, their ADM formula gives you X amount of dollars based on the number of teachers you should have, probably standard of quality teachers that you should have based on that number of students, right? So that's all part of your $60 million total budget.
I get that part. I'm looking at where is, because I'm trying to balance with the HVAC and all of that. When we come back to the county, what we have to consider is whatever changes that we are suggesting to salary has to be sustained. In plain English, it does not make sense to give staff a raise that we can't, right? So what you're saying is that step has to be included. So if we were to say local money, I know it all goes in the pot. The burden for the county is then to sustain whatever. And the suggestion is to split in half, to sustain it at a smaller portion.
No.
No, that's what.
Well, let me do this. I think, Dr. Rollins, so you're saying, what I'm hearing you saying is, why not spend the 561 in this year's budget, correct?
Not in process. But
Process, okay.
I don't have an opinion yet about how to do it. I just want to make sure that we're talking process, that the process is
The process of spending the money or
the process
getting the
of
money?
where it came from.
It came from the state.
Yeah.
So, and your question was, then where does the local money?
I wanted to know if that 561 included local.
None.
It does
It's
not.
all state money.
So the
Right.
decision about
So-
splitting the 561 is splitting state money,
So, yeah,
not county money.
that's correct.
State money.
That's correct. Yeah, you are.
But see, the problem gets to highlight every time we look at the whole 6 million. Well, I'm sorry, but there was a superintendent many, many years ago who never returned any money back to the county. What he did was he said he was using county money first, and the money he had left was state money that he automatically could use somewhere else. Okay? Well, I'll leave it there. I didn't agree with that. A lot of people didn't agree with that. So where we are in this particular case is this money is supposed to go into your operating budget. If it did purely one for one, then you would take 561 out of county money, move it somewhere else to say, I no longer have to use this county money for salaries. I can use it for whatever else. That's kind of what happened. It's still the amount of money. It's just, is it over here? Is it over there? I don't think that's really a care for any of us.
And I think at the end of the day, it all gets into the same pot.
It's into that 60 million and change that you guys have.
Then
And
that answers fine.
and we really, I don't care where it came from. You don't care where it came from. You got it to use.
Point of clarity.
Gentlemen,
I'm in her ballpark as far as wanting to, I do like chronology.
Just did the exact same thing.
281, July 1, 281, July 2nd.
Mhm.
And then
June and July.
well, June 30th, July 1. And then is the 296-ish.
That because it covers the 281 plus 5.
That's the add-on to whatever the number was.
So right.
To make this sustainable moving forward. Then at the end of the fiscal year, when the ADM report comes in, then the next batch of money for that ADM person should come in for those extra students. Is that?
I think the county's got to find another 81 for next for 25. So
Yeah.
all right.
Dr. Mitchell.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll go back to her.
So you get the 561, and I think the question is, you'd rather have all the 561 in 23, correct? That's really what.
Well, we do have it, yes.
I'm just
And that
more.
benefits the teachers
So, right.
most.
So I think to Dr. Rollins Bell's point, I think, would you even consider doing half and giving the other half this year?
So I won't respond directly. I'll respond
That's what you
indirectly.
consider.
I think consider is absolutely
Right,
a healthy
okay.
option.
It's up to school board.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And I think possibly what I've drawn out would help people understand what is being proposed. In FY '23, we are going to use, based on what's proposed for consideration, half of our ADM money and give about $1,500 versus the $1,000. Then on July 1, that other half of the ADM money that we did not use rolls into the general fund. They're saying they would reserve that and they would pair it with its equivalent pot of money, the 296. So that would make that 563 whole. It would be half the ADM and half of their money. And then in FY '24, they're gonna have to do the 563,
25.
whatever it is.
Right.
Excuse me, yes, FY '25. They're gonna have to do it all. Basically, what it's doing is it's allowing them a more conservative approach to funding it. It's giving them more time. The downside is as we are bleeding out staff to Hanover and neighboring divisions, and we are free agency, it isn't addressing the root issue. While I hear what you want to do, and I totally understand that approach, I don't think it is helping us right now as teachers are signing contracts.
But can you do a contract based on 24 with the new number? They would go to this zero, they would go to this 0.16 step would be fixed for, we would budget it for 24.
The contract for 24 would be the new number, not the 23 number, it would be the 24. So the contract will look essentially the same. So I
hear you and I don't disagree.
Okay.
But
I
when
was just
you are
confused.
making a decision right now to go serve in Hanover where you live versus Caroline and signing, knowing that you're going to retroactively get 3,000 versus 1,500 could be a tipping point for some people. And so I think one of the other aspects we need to consider is this is just step one. So we're delaying to FY '25, just 561. We're never going to get, oh, sorry, wrong one. We're never going to get to these other steps. So I would like to share those additional revenue sources if we think it's something we could consider. You mentioned a new source that I hadn't even been aware of, which I think was additional sales tax. Is that what you just mentioned?
It's from the commission revenue for personal property.
Okay.
Personal property.
Is that the
Carol,
discovered funds?
yeah, it's calendar year,
Okay,
not
so
budget. So
thank you.
it screws up. I mean, it can, if it were to go down in January and I budgeted to be more, it would be negative, but we would be the other way.
Essentially, it's
So
like a tax
discovered
increase.
funds were $1,053,874 in general fund and $494,000 to utility funds. So those were newly discovered funds.
Stop right there, so we can make sure you understand. The utility is money we really don't get, but the 1 million,
Okay, 1
that
million.
1 million is because of the commissioner revenues, additional vehicles, boats, whatever in the county.
Great.
That number, half of that will be received in June because this fiscal year has another tax collection. That's the money I'm talking about that we had never talked about before.
I love that. So we are talking apples to apples with the 1,053,874, knowing half is coming.
That's
in
24.
June, and the other is coming in 24,
A
which is
million
when we
is-
need the money.
1 million is 24, 500,000 is 23.
Okay, great. So that is even better. The other funding
Million.
source that we haven't talked about, which may already be like allocated to something, I just don't know, because it's such a new conversation. And I do appreciate Ms. Smith and Mr. Parton kind of explaining this a little bit, is the cigarette revenues. We budgeted for FY '24, $450,000. In 2 months' time, we've already made $240,000.
But that's not
Now,
a
I
monthly thing.
understand that they had to buy the tax books.
They buy the stamps, they buy stamps and they buy a
Upfront.
month of rolls and upfront and
Absolutely.
so that could be 6 months worth.
Yes, sir. But if we're budgeting for 50, I'm just saying that's new revenue that also might be of assistance in conjunction with the discovered million.
That's already in, the 400's already in the budget.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, that's
Thank you
not
for
outside of the
that.
budget.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
New would be anything over 450.
Thank you. That's the
Every-
conversation.
Every possible revenue source is in the budget already, except that 500,000 that I just mentioned.
And that's why I'm
For
at the-
this year.
That's why I'm
But
at
a
the
million for next year.
300,000.
$1 million for next year is in the budget.
That's why I'm at the 300. If we split it and did the 300,000, because we got to come up with 296.
Right.
I'll call it 300. If we split the ADM money between 23 and 24, the 300 that we have to come up with, I agree with Mr. Thomas, is in property that we could then know we can do without scrambling to figure out where else
Won't
it comes
affect the fund balance at all.
Exactly.
We did
And
90%
it's
of
already
that revenue.
covered, so everybody's clear. It doesn't make the 25 budget in question because it's covered in 24. We'll roll forward in 25, and then we'd start the budget with a straight line, not, we gotta start behind the line with the money that we spent already, because it would be accounted for and we paid for.
So, Mr. Sealy, you don't see that plan delaying the implementation of any of these other steps? Because at the same time, we still need to raise salaries
But
collectively.
we're still doing your step one right on time in 24.
No,
We
that's
only got
actually an
one
FY 23 step.
Okay, but we're gonna accomplish that. We don't have the 4 point, we all agree we have the 4.7.
No, I'm just focusing on this because remember, 0 to 16, everybody is well below 50th percentile, but 0 to 16 is significantly below.
and
They
we
have
would-
to be brought level with everyone else that's below,
Well, if we have to go find almost 600,000 to do that.
but you don't, it's there.
No, it's not there because if you go backwards, we've still got to come up with that in 24, another 500 and something thousand. If we do the whole step in 23, and you retroactive pay everybody the 3,000,
Right.
we've got to come up with 500 and some thousand in 20 right now for 24.
Correct, out of
And
that
we don't
$1
have
million.
the whole 500. We have 3 something.
Am I not understanding? I think you have $1,053,874 of discovered funds.
Yeah, but that's in the, that's.
It's already in the budget. We've already spent that on
That's
capital
next year.
projects.
He's moving that. He recommends moving that somewhere
Well,
else.
that's a recommendation
Right.
that hasn't been approved, and so that's what we're asking tonight, is for you to reconsider where those discovered funds are going.
Right, and here's my concern. We still have to do the HVAC. Everything we can pay cash for now frees us up to be able to do something with the HVAC in 25, because we're gonna have to find that money. I'm trying to get you where do you need to be and look at the HVAC that came in at 10.6. We don't know where it's gonna come in with the rebid, but it's probably gonna be over 7. And we're gonna have less than 4. So we're gonna have to figure out how to pay for that. And the rest of this, I'm trying to be equitable all the way around, get you in the beginning of 24 to be where you want to be at the end of 23, and split the hairs a little bit. We're gonna need the extra money because we're gonna have to fund that HVAC somewhere, and we still gotta buy things like school buses and cars and fire trucks and all the things that we're paying for. And we're trying to keep our budget solvent enough that we have an opening at the end of next year to look at how do we pay for the HVAC, which is my primary concern, is how do we get that building healthy and fixed and still help you with teachers and still help with that? Because that's really the goal, to get that building, because it's a whole building we can't lose. So this to me gives us the room to have some funds left that we could look at HVAC with in the middle school. Get you the teachers in 24, at the beginning of 24, on track, and still have some cash to keep our debt from going up any higher, paying cash for it, so that we build some headspace for later, which is really what we've got to do. I'm trying to get us all to the same place with all the same things that are on this list.
Understand the approach you're taking, and I appreciate the ingenuity behind it. I really do. I just am concerned that we're stalwarting the process and that we are going to continuously be having this dialogue about salary until we really make an investment that is beyond what our neighboring peers are doing. And this is not that. This is not beyond what our neighbors are doing. We're not even really scratching the surface. This is a small component of what must be done, which we're greatly appreciative for the discussion. But when we are given the ADM opportunity to invest and retroactively support 0 to 16 teachers, we need to do that. And then when we discover funds and are able to support the continuity of that, I just would hope that it would garner some real commitment and or support
But we still have
without
to
having
look
to
at
delay.
But we still have to look at the totality of the picture. The middle school is still a huge project
It is.
that we've got to do the heavy lift, because the revenue that we need for that isn't anyplace else. And the less we borrow, the more we pay cash for. The more we have cash for the HVAC system, the better off we are, because our ability to borrow is really thin right now. And that's gonna come in at least $7 million. Hopefully it comes in less than 10. But I'm just looking at a path for us.
And that's, yeah, that's,
Yes, sir.
that's part of what I want to do. Could I ask Dr. Rollins Fells first? She had her hand up. Sorry. And then Mr. Blunt.
So I appreciate the dialogue, and I think this has been a very productive meeting. And I appreciate coming to the table with something that we can work through. I think that my primary concern are the people, because right now there's already a national shortage. This is contract season right now. And there is a continued conversation. It's not a blame thing, it's just the nature of what it is. But I think right now we are in a season that we have not seen before. And if we do not do something right now, there's going to be a whole different conversation, and HVAC is important. My philosophy is in budgeting, people are first. So with the things that are laid out, does it address teacher retention and that swing piece that would help our staff to sign their contract? And I pray to even say that out loud, so please don't even respond. But I think that's where the priority needs to be. So we've worked this out, everything else, and now it comes to what is the problem that we're trying to address. Yes, raising salaries, yes, median wage, yes, competitive salary. But right now, we better retain the folks that we have.
That's a great one. Mr. Black?
Doctor, so can you just go over some in layman's terms for people that are watching? So with Mr. Seeley's plan versus the full implementation, what is it? And so I'm a teacher in Caroline County Public Schools. I'm at step 8, whatever, in the 0-16. What would the two plans, well, how would that affect the teacher, and how would the difference of the two plans affect the teacher?
23.
In FY23, if we move forward with the plan that we proposed on the bottom of the page, a 0-year teacher that worked for us this year would see an additional $3,000 in this school year pay cycle. If we move
So they, like, their last paycheck comes what, June or
would be
July.
right?
July
they're paid.
31st. So the last for this year's school year would be July 31st. So between now and July, I'm just trying to make it so that
Correct.
everyone
So they would have
understands
the
in layman's terms.
$3,000.
Right, so they would get an extra $3,000 between now and July 30th.
Correct.
Okay.
If we move forward with alternately proposed plan, then they would get $1,500 between now and that July 30th last paycheck. But as Seeley pointed out, their FY24 contract would reflect the full 563 in terms of the portion that they would be receiving. So next year, they 1,000 paid out over those 12 months. So it's delaying that $1,500 access right now. In essence, you get to the end game, it looks and feels similar, but the front end impact is not teacher end.
The time value of money tells you that you're already gonna give a flat. If you spend $1,500 up front and then 1 month later, or 2 months
Based on
later, or
inflation.
12 months later, you are guaranteed to give them in total less money because of the time value of money.
It'll be the same amount of money, but that money will have less effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
Coach Spalding, you want to weigh in again? Please. I mean, this is what we're here.
The point that Jawanda made on now, because like you said, these people, the old thing of keeping teachers for 15, 20 years and all that. But it doesn't happen. And I can go across the road or across the river, whatever. I mean, these things we talked about, and it's going to get worse. This year was probably, as long as I've been here, was the hardest year that we've ever had getting teachers, first year teachers right out of school. And it's going to get tougher and tougher. And then the ones that come in and get their experience here, they're going to go right up the road here, 15 miles, and make $5,000-$6,000 more. And that leaves us looking again. We're kind of like the minors in baseball. Pro ball. There, they get that experience, they bring them up to the big boys, spot Steve, Stafford, whomever. I mean, it's just, that's the nature of the business.
I kind of disagree with us being the minor leagues anywhere.
No.
And kind of prefer to pick up a Billy ball.
No, I'm just saying, teachers, like I said, they can go anywhere they want.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere they want. It's like that all across the nation, not just here in Carolina. And we have enough problems getting and keeping teachers here that even live here. Most of them live either south or north of us, or whatever, and so forth. So we don't get any tax money from them, in homes or whatever. And I mean, we're just, sometimes I feel like we're like stepchildren. I mean, I'm telling you like it is. I'm not color coded. I've been here too long, maybe too long. But if we don't get on the ball and say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. That can is getting more expensive every time we kick it.
Mr. Taylor?
Oh, I don't want to jump over this.
No, I was saving the lady for last.
Oh, okay. All right. First of all, let me just say thank you to both for coming together and sitting down and talking and trying to come up with feasible solutions to the situation. But I think I would say for one time, I would like to see us really put education first. I know that there's a problem with the HVAC system. And I know that certainly I served on the board of supervisors for 20 years. I know what you have to deal with. But at the same time, even when I served, I always felt like we did not put education first. We said we did. But when it came to cuts, or when it came to situations, it always seemed like education suffered. If we do what we asked for, the plan that we laid out, if we do it, it still does not solve many of our problems in education. And I can tell you, if we deviate from this, we haven't even addressed step 2, step 3. If we deviate from what we came in here to do, it is going to not only negatively impact this, but it's going to negatively impact step 2, step 3 as well. Because those steps are going to require even more funding than what we're asking for now. So it's time to bite the bullet and do it.
Thank you for letting me be last. I think the staff that we have, we're very fortunate to have and to have maintained. Our staff are loyal, and they know we have a good leadership. Our school system has come so far along. We have some of the best people in places that we have ever had. And I can tell you, I've been here since '64, so I do know what the schools are like, and I've been through them for years. And I just think our teachers and our faculty deserve this. It's not like it's a superstitious or superfluous amount of money that we're asking for. The ADM helps, and we need this for our teachers to keep. I mean, they're not going to stay. They can't live here and do what they need to do without some more money. And it's costing everybody more. And the ones who are traveling and carpooling, we just need to keep the good people in place. We need your help, and that's what we're asking.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, you want to add something more, or Mr. Copeland?
Stuff in the-
You're really not quite lying. Sorry about that. You like that. Mr. Copeland, yeah, first in my heart, I like that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing us to meet and have this. This is a great meeting. I have to say, I agree. The dialogue is the best I've ever heard in the 8 years that I've been serving. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's refreshing to get here. That being said, we do need to advocate fully for the funding. A tax increase is a way to do that without negatively impacting anybody else's budget, robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's for everybody to chip in a little bit more. That's the last I have to say about that.
Yeah, 3 real quick points. One, sincerely, thanks to everybody here, the board of supervisors, guys. I know that you went out of your way to make this meeting happen, and I really appreciate that. I know that tomorrow night's graduation, I hope all of you come. I know you got another scheduled meeting on Wednesday night, so meeting us tonight, it speaks volumes, I feel, about the commitment that you have to making this situation better, and I really appreciate that. Number 2, this is the national teacher shortage. It is a national problem, and it is going to require a local solution. Unfortunately, each locality is going to have to set their values. What is the most important to each person that sits on that side of the table? And so the ball's going to be in your court as far as finance. Number 3, I strongly encourage both of our boards to get together in July after the budget season and everything, all the contentious stuff is all behind us, and get together and have a retreat. We have a couple places in mind where we're not bound by time constraints, but we can have a more fruitful conversation like we did this evening and develop a better relationship, establish some procedures that we can both agree to. Because as we all know, I'm just one guy on one board, you're just one guy on one board, and the will of the board is going to speak over top of any single person. But hopefully you'll consider finding a day in July where we can get together and have another fruitful conversation. And thank you again for meeting tonight, because I know it speaks volumes to me.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Before we get back around to you, I had tried, you mentioned the retreat, and I mentioned the team building exercise. And to let the rest of the board know, I told Mr. Kelly that the Board of Supervisors and the school board should team up, be on the same team, and challenge the middle school to kickball. Okay?
Clarify who you did not want to play against.
I did not want to play against the high school. Because I thought that would be a bad thing. I hate losing. But that's really the spirit that we're all involved in. Because we are the same team. We have different approaches to how our team wins. But I always look for a win-win. That's the way life works best for me. Your success is my success. I think that's the time frame that we had intended for the meeting. I think a couple of board members wanted to say something else. But Mr. Cully is asking me to point out, I have the email we got from the finance director. And personal property tax revenues will increase $621,000 next year based on a 6% growth from the commissioner revenue. We will get 231 from machinery and tools tax, and we will get 53,000 from motor vehicle carrier tax for a total of $900,000. We're not sure when machinery and tools gets or motor vehicle gets credited to the county. It may be 2 times, like December or June and December, maybe 1 time, but 906,000 was the number we have in additional revenue from the commission revenue, based on vehicles, boats, and other personal property in the county that wasn't identified before. Yes, sir.
Chairman, is that the sources that we discussed in the last meeting, or is this in addition to that?
No, those are the sources that were discussed in the last meeting. this is a further clarification of where that 900,000, because we just threw out 900,000. There was also something else lower in here. B-pole, we got 256 more in B-pole, but we lost 109 for ambulance recovery. So,
I guess the point being, the June tax collection, you could count about 50% of the 600 number. I don't know that I count 50% of the 900 number because I'm not sure exactly when those revenues start.
yeah, that's the balancing act we have. The other part of that is, which is why I asked if the school expected to have any funds left over this year, is maybe you could put some of that in. I know that's not what we normally do, but we could do that. That would help us delay anything else. So those are all the options we have on the board. I didn't know if anybody wanted to add any more. Mr. Black, you keep raising your hand.
Yeah, I just had two things. First of all, I wanted to mention something. There was, I went to the award ceremony for the scholarships because the Rotary Club gave out a couple of scholarships. And it was something the schools are doing. We had talked about in our last meeting, we're giving money to, I guess Caroline's Promise to help with the teachers. There's a program that the schools have started, which I think is brilliant, and it's whatever future teachers or future leaders, teachers and leaders, and I think that would be a way that we could really support them because would you give? It was if I remember correctly, they give them a little bit of scholarship to college, and then if they come back to Caroline after they've completed college, they get a bonus, $3,000 signing bonus to teach with Caroline. And maybe that'd be a pot that we could sweeten. Because we always talk about we want people, because as well as I do, if you have a teacher that's from Caroline that's teaching in Caroline, they're going to care more than it's a homegrown local village type thing. I think that would be something that we could look at down the road because I think that program is brilliant. I was really impressed with that. I was like, yeah, that's a really it's a way to address, and I don't think it'll cost us a ton of money to help those kids that are going on into because there's not a lot right now. It's an incentive to bring them in. So I think that's something we could really. I think how many did you give out? Two, yeah, and they guaranteed a job in Caroline when they graduate. So it's a really good thing. The second thing is Mr. Forehand has mentioned that he is not going to be at the Wednesday meeting. And I was wondering, since Mr. Forehand is not going to be at the Wednesday meeting, if we could just vote on the budget now.
No.
This is actually a special call meeting. It's not a work session.
Yeah.
So do you?
I think the only thing that we had left that we were in disagreement with, I think everything else that was non-school related to the budget, we didn't have any issues with.
Clay, can you phone in or?
Yes.
You can phone in for the meeting?
Okay.
All right. I don't care how loud it is in the background.
County, or I might be in Warren County.
That's fine. I thought you were going to.
Phone still works.
Right. All right.
Hopefully.
All right. We need to make sure we got all of us there because I think we're going to have some more debate. But on your topic, we've been touching base with Caroline's Promise and the director of Caroline's Promise because again, this is the way that I'm a control freak. There's no way to put it. I like to control what I can control. I can't control anything regarding the school system, theoretically, but I can create a fund that gives money to teachers so they don't spend their own money. And that's what we're going to do with Caroline's Promise once we work out the details and as soon as Mrs. Rollins makes sure we're all okay with that. President, I'm sorry. Okay. But that's one thing we're going to do. And the other thing is we're trying to add more money for staff computers, which is the CIP. So there are little small things that we can do along that sense. So we're going to continue working on those. We're going to do the budget. You want to give us, Mr. Cully, a summary of your number and Mr. Seeley's half number, and then the 561 now or later, so we all know where we are when we start discussing it Wednesday.
He should email that out. It could be better than trying to read it out.
Run it out. Yeah.
Let him email that. Because
You're not going to vote on tonight. Let me just.
No, I just wanted to make sure. Okay. 290 something is additional funds.
If you did half in 23 and then fully funded in 24, we would need 295,586
For this year's budget,
for 24.
for 24.
Over and above the 767,348. Instead of, if you do the full thing,
Which is coming from the.
Yeah,
Part of it, right.
Part of it.
well, they're
Well,
all
all of
coming
it,
from
yeah.
the, yeah.
That's the source.
their 512 will be split over.
Well, that's right, I'm saying. I just want to make sure it's clear what money's coming from.
So I mean, these are things that and then we talked about the additional revenue we'll see in the June tax collection, which affects this fiscal year's fund balance, which we can then in turn reappropriate.
Right.
The other, this is like a house of cards. The other factor is the state budget could come back and say, here's more money, here's less money. Well, they shouldn't come back and say
I don't think that could be less.
They shouldn't say,
It won't be, it shouldn't be less, it'll be more of anything, is my understanding.
yeah.
Any budget was adopted.
We're gonna say shouldn't, just because we don't really want to get hurt. But theoretically, that's what should happen. They could come back with more. I don't have a problem with that money is gonna go to schools anyhow. So,
Depends what the match is.
well, yeah, we've had matches before, so that's kind of where we are. We're not gonna vote on the budget now. We're gonna vote on the budget like we planned on Wednesday. We've got a couple of things like we're mentioning that we're gonna add into the budget. Then I think the board is pretty much aware of most of those. So are there any questions or things we did not cover that we should now?
I did not, I didn't see it on our agenda, but I did not hear anything regarding the projected.
They don't have anything. They don't have
Nothing.
any more than I did.
Marcia didn't want to tell us what.
Yeah.
She's got it over there. She just didn't want to tell us. It's a little early.
That she's in the wrong zone. Right. You can use money someplace
But
else.
part of that, just so you know, is the money the county put in for the HVAC project, the $800 and some thousand, was reversion funds from last year. So if there's an 800,000 reversion this year, it'd be wonderful. We'll have money to split, in both cases. All right, no other questions?
You mean put into a reserve account?
Second.
Well,
Second.
normally I would, but I'm gonna ask Reverend Rollins Fell to give us the benediction and a prayer on our way out so we can keep the peace of our Lord. Would you please?
Yes, thank you. If we would just bow and be still for a moment. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and we thank you for the opportunity to come together. We thank you that we came in with the agreement to discuss, to be cordial, and to represent our community the best that we know how. Thank you for the peace that has been present in this meeting. Thank you for the ideas that have come forward with our community's best interest at heart. We ask that you would give us wisdom to make the best decision for our people, that you would have us to work in excellence as we move forward on this day. Let this meeting be an example for how we can come together and have a conversation to understand one another and to walk away with information so we can. We thank you for our staff. We thank you for our teachers and those that are present in this room and those that are not. We thank you for our students as they're wrapping up our year. We thank you for our families. We thank you for the community of Caroline County, so that when school is dismissed and families are engaging here where we live, work, and play, that they will be protected in peace, that there will be plenty of opportunities for them to grow. And we thank you for one mindset, #1 Caroline. We thank you for the opportunity to sit in these seats, 6 on one side, 6 on the other, to make decisions on behalf of all that are living here in our community. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Now you have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
To adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Like a